But let me begin today by reminding you that 50 years ago, this Thursday, the Miami show band were making their way home from a gig in Banbridge. Heading south, between Banbridge and Newry at Buskill, they were stopped by what they believed to be a British Army checkpoint. In fact, it was members of the UVF who attempted to plant a bomb on the band's minibus. The bomb exploded prematurely, killing two of the terrorists. All hell then broke loose, with Fran O'Toole, Tony Geraghty and Brian McCoy shot to pieces. Desley and Stephen Travers somehow survived. The story and more is recounted in a wonderful new book, which is called My Saxophone Saved My Life. And I'm so pleased to tell you that joining me as my first guest this week on the show today is Miami Massacre survivor Des Lee. Des, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jerry. Good afternoon to you and your listeners. Thank you.
I read the book the weekend. It is ghostwritten by our own Ken Murray. I have to congratulate Ken and you on the story.
Yeah, no, Ken did a wonderful job.
It's a great job.
Thank you.
It's a story about the massacre, of course, but more besides about you and your life. May I say you've lived so many lives.
I've been to hell and back, Jerry.
You have indeed. I want to go back to that night, and I'm sure you have, shocking memories. It comes back to you time and again. You were in Banbridge, played that gig, and you guys, you were the top show band in Ireland. You were up and down the country, in the north, the south, the east and the west. Were you ever warned that there was danger?
Never, because we played north and south, and we were used to getting stopped at roadblocks, whether that was in Derry, Banbridge, Belfast, whatever. So on that particular night, we were flagged down with a red light, and that was norm to us. So we were never ever thought of anything going wrong until that unfortunate night.
And when you were taken out of the minibus and you saw the guys in uniform or that, were you still not
Absolutely
alarmed?
Not alarmed. We got out. We thought everything was in order, and Brian, God rest him, who was driving the minibus at the time, Brian said to all of us, guys, don't worry. This is the British Army. There's nothing to worry about.
How soon did it dawn on you that something untoward was happened? Describe those moments.
Well, basically what happened, they asked us to get out of the van and to face the ditch, which we all did. Now, there was 5 of us in a line facing the ditch. We were asked all the questions, which were normal questions when you're stopped at a roadblock. What's your name? Where are you coming from? Where are you going to? Etc., etc. And we gave them all the answers. And the next thing is, one of the guys said, we're going to your minibus and we just want to check out your minibus to make sure everything's in order. And we said, fine, no problem. And I said to one of the guys, do you mind if I go to the minibus and take my saxophone out of the minibus and put it on the road and let you see it as a saxophone? They said, no problem. So I went to the minibus, I took my saxophone out, put it on the road, showed them it was a saxophone, and instead of going to where I was in the line, which was far left, number 1, and I then moved to the end of the line, which is number 5, next to the minibus. The next thing I know, there was an explosion. The guys were putting a 10-pound bomb in the van. The van exploded, and the next thing, all hell broke loose. There was gunfire, there was screaming, there was shouting, there was crying, and with the impact of the bomb, it lifted me off my feet, off the ground, and blew me over the ditch into the field below. And I landed face down on the grass, and I remember listening to all this horrific sounds all around me, and I remember saying, I just take care, stay down, keep your face in the grass, hold on to your breath as long as you can. It was like the GI movies during the war in Vietnam when they were playing dead. And I said, put your face down and pretend you're dead. And that's what I did. I held my breath for as long as I could. And I could hear all the voices all screaming around me and shouting. And I heard somebody shouting, are you sure all those bastards are dead? And I thought, oh no, God, I hope they're not coming back here. And the next thing is I heard running and screaming and shouting. And the next thing, after about 10 minutes, the noise seems to have gone down. And I thought, no, well, I'm going to have to make a run for it, because when the minibus exploded, it was on fire. And the fire caught hold of the ditch. And the ditch was coming close to my body, and I realized, if I don't get out of here, I'm going to be burnt alive. So I turned around and I called out, Fran, Brian, and Tony. I got no response. I called out Stephen Travers, and Stephen was murmuring to me. And I said to Stephen, I'm going for help. And I wasn't sure when I got up to make a run up that ditch whether it be guys there still waiting for me, and I would have been shot dead. But thank God, when I got up onto the main road, they were all gone. All the terrorists were all gone, and there was just me, and I just saw all these bits of bodies, and it was unbelievable, all over the place. And there was a lorry driver with a trailer, and I asked him, could I get on his lorry, and he said no. I said, what about if I get on your trailer and you take me into the police station in Newry? He said no. He must have thought I was part of what was going on all around him. And then a young couple came along, and thank God they gave me a lift into Newry police station. But at that stage, I didn't trust anybody. I had my hand on the door lock, and if they weren't going into Newry, I was ready to jump out of the car. But thank God they took me into Newry police station.
And that move by you to retrieve your saxophone, that's the title of this book, because the saxophone
saved my life. Yes.
The other, unfortunately, fortunately, you and Stephen were blown over the ditch into the field, and that actually ultimately saved your lives.
Yep.
It pains you. I look at you there, even 50 years later, the pain on your face. And I ain't one bit surprised. How do you cope with, I mentioned to you, what happened in the aftermath, the first anniversary, 10, 20, 30, now the 50, it keeps coming up all the time. Is it as painful as ever?
Very much. I relive this every day of my life. Now, the reason for that is quite simple. They were my brothers. And I lived in Dublin with the Miami. My family were all in Belfast. So these guys were literally my brothers. And I was heartbroken when they were slaughtered. They weren't killed, they were slaughtered. And in my apartment in Belfast, I have photographs of Fran and the guys in the band, whether it's in my bedroom or in my lounge. So I wake up every day and I see these photographs. And it's just heartbreaking. People say, why don't you take them down? Oh, no, God, no. I want to, for the rest of my life, as long as I'm alive, I want to have those there to remind me of my brothers, and they will stay there as long as I'm alive. And as I say, Fran was my songwriting partner. I wrote Love Is, which was 6 weeks #1 for Fran. I wrote his album, which is called Reflections of Fran O'Toole, and I wrote 90% of that album with Fran. So, no, it's very, very difficult. People say, time heals. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. This will hit me for the rest of my life.
On reading the book, what stands out is this, and this must be part of your pain. 2 of the terrorists were blown to bits.
Yes.
These were UVF terrorists that were planting that bomb on that bus.
Yes.
To cause bedlam, because the bus, had you got back on board and travelled south,
yes,
it would have exploded.
Yes.
And then there would have been a different take on this. There would have been fingers pointed to say that you and others of your ilk were carrying bombs into the north, etc. Nobody has, I know there were convictions, but you have never got the answers you seek. Who was behind this? Who constructed this? Who were the masterminds?
The mastermind behind the whole thing was a guy called Robert Narek. Now, that is in my book as well. The British have always denied, even to this day, they deny that Robert Narek was involved. But with Ken's hard work, we were able to put beyond doubt that Narek was involved. Narek planned the massacre down to the uniforms, the weaponry, the motor vehicles, the bomb. He planned absolutely everything. That man was absolutely evil.
And he disappeared, right?
He disappeared. He was apparently he was, the IRA found him and they massacred him apparently. I don't know, basically. But all I know is he disappeared. He's never been found.
Never. But here's the thing. He had his paymasters above him.
Yes.
And that's the point here, that it went higher than Narek.
It was the British government. Now, the Brits have a lot to answer for. A lot to answer for. And there are certain things we never got answers to. But I have stuck, as has Ken, to our beliefs that the top man was Narek. But in saying that, there was also people in the British government who knew what was going on.
I want to go back to the night itself because there were some people who were very lucky. One of your band members headed north back home to his parents.
That's correct. That was Ray Miller.
Brian Maguire, who was once of this parish. Brian worked here and sport for a time.
Brian, what a lovely man. What a lovely man.
He was your road manager. He went on ahead in...
That's
you
correct.
had 2 minibuses. He went on ahead with the gear.
That's correct.
And there were 2 girls who followed the Miami everywhere, who begged you to give them a lift back to Newry.
Yes.
Weren't they so fortunate?
Well, I can tell you now, those 2 girls, they came to us after the dance was over and they said, can we have a lift back to Newry? And we said no, because Brian is going ahead of us and we'd rather you take a lift with Brian. Thank God we said that, because had they been with us on the night, God knows what would have happened. The 2 girls got the lift with Brian into Newry, and that saved their lives.
It did. It did, but look at your life. I mentioned at the start, you have lived so many lives. You have been through so much yourself. What I want to do is take a short break here and come back and talk to you in the time that I have. I could have you for the whole afternoon. I have to be honest
thank
with
you,
you,
Jerry.
Leslie.
Thank you,
but look,
Jerry.
Stay with us on Late Lunch.
Thank you.
We have a survivor of the Miami Massacre, Desley, with us on Late Lunch. Desley is with me on Late Lunch, survivor of the Miami Showband Massacre. The anniversary, the 50th, is this Thursday, and his new book is called My Saxophone Saved My Life. Our own Ken Murray ghostwriting the book with Des. It's a fantastic read, I have to say. The love of your life, this woman that came into your life, that in this book, that love story, just it comes off the pages time after time. Brenda.
Oh, I'm sorry if I'm getting tearful. Brenda, I met on a blind date. I was playing with the show band down in Cork at the time. I went to Cork after I left Belfast. I got a job offer down there with a band called The Regal. And I went to live in Cork. I left Belfast. And while I was down there, one of the members of the band saw that I was very lonely, and I obviously missed my family in Belfast. But he said, look, would you like to meet a lovely girl in Cork? And I said, oh, that would be lovely. On a blind date? Yeah. We're going to introduce you to a wee girl here in Cork. Beautiful girl. And her name is Brenda O'Driscoll. So I said, okay. So they set up a date. And the date was outside the GPO in Cork, in her little green Ford Anglia. And I'll never forget it. The registration number was TIF 151. And
What a memory.
yeah, TIF 151. And I got into the car and I saw this girl and she was just beautiful. And I thought all my birthdays had come together. And she was just stunning. She was so intelligent, so beautiful. And we started talking. And immediately I thought, oh my goodness, it's just wonderful. Then all of a sudden I forgot about Belfast. And I just wanted another date and set up another date and another date. And before I knew it, I was in love. And before I knew it, we were dating each other morning, noon, and night. She would come to my gigs, whether it was Killarney, whether it was wherever. And she would come along with me to all my gigs. And we absolutely fell in love. And that was 1969. Sorry, 1967. Then we got married in 1969. And the funny thing is, my favorite song of all time is The Summer of 69. Because that's when I got married to my late wife, Brenda.
Can I say the love just pours from the pages right through the story? And
Thank you.
I can only know, you miss her so much. You miss her so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. But coming back to, this time and this 50th anniversary again, do you still hope that you'll find out what was behind what happened on that fateful night 50 years ago?
Well, the British are very clever at hiding things. We all know that down the years. From every country that they've been in, what they've done, what they've hidden. And I honestly believe we will never, ever know the real truth about the Miami. But at least I was able to tell my story along with Ken and get what we could. And I believe we've got quite a lot. The most important part of our story was Narek. Now, whatever the British were involved in, we will never know. Possibly never know. But the most important thing was Narek. And we found that information after a lot of hunting, thanks to Ken. We went to our solicitor in Belfast and we spent hours going through files, looking at pages, one after the other. Took a long time, but we eventually found that document which gave us that evidence that he was involved.
A listener's just messaged in to say they were listening to Radio Ulster just before lunch, and a DU politician, he's not sure who it was asked to give his opinion on a memorial march next weekend to remember Harris Boyle, one of the guys who was blown to pieces planting that bomb in your minibus, and he couldn't give a straight answer to condemn the march. Isn't that shocking still, that prevails even at this time? I have to ask you this. When you went back to play, and you did go back to play with the Miami, in October of the same year, and you went to Galway, to Strandhill, to the ballroom there, where you had performed, was it the night before? Seapoint. You went there, Seapoint, I beg your pardon. You went back to that venue, and that was, very close to when you went to Banbridge, before the fatality happened there and all the went on there. How did you do that? How did you go back on stage without the three guys? Were any other members back on stage?
The only one was Stephen Travers and me.
You, okay.
Now, the thing about it was the Miami management came to us and said, we would like to put the band back on the road again. And Stephen and I discussed it. We also discussed it with the families. Helen McCoy, the O'Tooles. Now, the Geraghty stayed clear of everything after the massacre. They didn't want to know anything. So we decided, for the sake of the families, let's put the band back on the road again. And we did, and we opened up in Seapoint Ballroom in Galway, in Seapoint in Galway. And that was the venue that we left the night before the massacre. And we got on stage, and I have never seen such bedlam in all my life. The place was chock-a-block to the roof. People screaming, people crying, people shouting our names. And it's a scene I will never forget. But as I looked around me on the stage, there was no Fran, there was no Bran, there was no Tony. So it was a difficult night for me, a very, very difficult night for me. And that carried on for a few months after we went back on the road.
I can't do justice in the time I have today to your life story, honestly, because it is amazing. But after the Miami, you went to live in South Africa, you spent time in Zambia,
Yep.
you arrived back in Lanzarote, and eventually it comes full circle back to Belfast where you live today. You've beaten cancer, you've dealt with diabetes, you've beaten the old alcohol thing as well. You two wonderful sons. You tragically lost one of your sons.
Yeah.
Really, the tragedy of that, to lose a boy. You don't expect
My
to
son
lose
Gary.
Gary.
Yeah.
And your other son, Daryl, of course.
He lives in Singapore.
Yes, who's prominent in the book as well.
Yeah.
You're an amazing man.
Thank you.
I want to say
Thank
you
Jerry.
really are
Thank
an
you.
amazing man,
Thank
what
you.
you've come through in your lifetime.
Thank you.
Despite all, are you grateful for the life you've had, just in a final few words, and despite everything that's happened to you?
Oh, yes. I am totally grateful that I'm alive to just tell the story. Their idea that night was to blow us all to smithereens. But thank God I survived and I was able to tell the truth. That is the most important thing, that the world out there today knows the truth of that night. Because had we all been blown to smithereens, they maybe would have never known the truth. So thank God I survived it to tell the truth.
The book is called My Saxophone Saved My Life. It's the life and times of Miami Massacre survivor Des Lee. And I have to congratulate you, Des, and again Ken Murray, on this wonderful book. It's been launched tonight in Dublin, 6 p.m, Hodges Figgis on Dawson Street. Everybody welcome. And just to mention that the two girls who went with Brian in the advance minibus were Maeve Fitzsimons and Magella Hunt, who went on to star in Lovebug. We got to mention those names as well. Thanks for that.